Ask the Author, a show about inspiring stories and conversations by creatives and all forms of art, music, movies, visual art, authors, creative writing, poetry, dance, culinary art, among others. Brought to you by the multi-award-winning author, life coach, and poet, Richard Mugisha.
Welcome back to Ask the Author. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you're watching from, wherever, in Africa, across the world, diaspora. I am your host, Richard Mugisha, on Ask the Author. Today, I have a very interesting, very exquisite guest on the show. She is the CEO or Chief Executive Officer for the Presidential CEO Forum, or what we commonly know as PCF in Uganda, Madam Irene Burungi Mugisha. And we'll be having a conversation about her book. She's an author. She's authored a book that has transformed many lives and inspired many. So we'll be discussing more about her book and herself, and what the book has done in her life, and of course in the lives of the people she's impacted. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you, Richard. I'm looking forward.
Yes. We have an audience that would like to know who Irene is, so please feel free to tell us who you are.
Well, greetings to you all. I would want to go with the audience in terms of your time zone, those within, those without, being able to know the afternoon, morning, or evening. Irene, wow. Irene is, I always want to start off by saying she's that simple girl who was born just within the neighborhood. But I also want to say that a unique person, as defined and transformed by God. So I'm a mother of 3. I'm married to 1 husband, but I'm a Ugandan, and I'm very proud to be a Ugandan. And Ugandan, we have diverse culture. I come from Fort Portal, a land of plenty, a land that has kingship. And so I go by the names of Irene Burungi Mugisha, but I add on Ateni. Ateni is a pet name I was given to by my grandmother. And so Irene is Ugandan, but an entrepreneur. I'm a publicist. I'm a business journalist. I'm a communication strategist. At the same time, I'm an author, and I'm very proud to be an author. And so to define more of Irene is I am the CEO and founder of All Round Consult. All Round Consult is a PR and communications firm that celebrated 15 years. That means we have moved a trajectory and journey from being just an initial stage of
startup,
okay, and now to being a more firm organization. I wear so many hats, being an entrepreneur, at the same time an employer. I am also a CEO of the Presidential CEO Forum, as Richard has mentioned. And this is a body that brings together the MDAs, that is ministries, agencies, and departments, to discuss patent issues that champion the governance of this country. And so more to that, I'm a columnist, like I've mentioned. So I write, as and when I have time, I do write to the different publications that we have in Uganda. I want to say I'm proud to be the first female television manager, but managing Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. And so at the same time as a first editorial producer for CNBC. CNBC is a product of South Africa that spoke to only business journalism. And so in all those different spheres that I've been in, I've been able to champion resilience, champion purpose, and champion excellence. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What a CV. Yes, Irene, that is interesting. You talked about championing resilience, purpose. These are values, or I would call them virtues, that are very pivotal for leadership. And you being a leader in all spheres that you've been in, I heard you mention a number of fasts. Yes, and fasts mean you've taken excellence as one of your key pivots that has enabled you be who you are, and the work that you've done in the various spheres. If I would ask a question that is direct, as a child, did you see yourself grow into the person that Irene is now?
The person that Irene is now, wow. I want to tackle it in two folds. First of all, being a firstborn was something that I believe was able to mold me into the person I am now. Because as a firstborn, you're given assignments. As a firstborn, you're actually in position to be a conduit between your parents and your siblings.
Yeah.
As a firstborn, everything is you first.
Yeah.
Then the rest follow. So your question of did I see myself where I am at right now is not really, and I don't think anyone can be able to do that. The only belief I have is whatever position you're in, much as I was a firstborn, you can be the lastborn, you can be the middleborn, you can be the second. I was born of 7, firstborn to 7. So my goal was to ensure are we doing our chores at the right time? My goal was to ensure that I became the first to experience what my parents would be proud of. And so if it must be to graduate from P7, I needed to finish P7. If it had to be to graduate from senior 4-6 to campus, I needed to do that for my siblings to be able to be motivated to do so. So that is one side, you're leading a team already.
Yeah.
And so you needed to be either passionate into leading them, or you needed to be hard into leading them. Followed by 4 boys was not an easy thing. So if you told a boy to sweep, that would be like, you're taking my time to play. So, but then you had to calculate ways of enticing them to do the work. And so I believe that was my most biggest foundation of leadership.
So I hear you say negotiation. So this being the firstborn taught you a number of skills. I've heard you mention passion. I've heard you mention negotiation. Yes, I've heard you mention collaboration. Yeah, I've also heard you indirectly mention having the desire. Napoleon Hill, one of the famous writers, leadership, growth, and self-development, personal development writers, said, and I quote, he said that in every achievement, starting with desire. Yeah, so what I heard you also say is desire. The desire was there so these framed you as a person, they built your character so that you were able to get where you are. You mentioned the second one, there was a second.
The second one was conduit. So you being a conduit between your parents and the siblings.
A mediator.
Meaning you're delegated. Meaning you have to take another level of discernment almost. Because when you're delegated, you have to have a level of knowing what is right and what is wrong. When you're a conduit between someone, meaning you have a reporting skill that you're adopting to yourself. So that to me also was very, very pivotal while growing up. That at the delegation bit of we are way, take charge. So you're learning skills of planning. You're learning skills of budgeting. You're also learning skills of actually delegating others. You're learning skills of understanding that who are the key players in this, in this family.
Who are the actors?
Who are the ones that are going to actually work to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So to me, those were the two folds.
What I'm seeing from what you're mentioning is structure. For everything that works must have structure. And by structure, you mentioned being the conduit between your parents and your siblings. So structure, the structures were already there that you're using to enable you become an effective person. So growing up, I've read your book, by the way. All hands down, masterpiece. And I mean it, masterpiece. On your story, you've authored a book called The CEO in You. what inspired you, Irene, to write a book?
Well, Richard, you just mentioned, first of all, at the beginning, that I'm a journalist by background. That was almost a time frame of about 15 years in journalism. And being a journalist means writing. Being a journalist means journaling. You can have time to journal something. So I speak to the moment I started to say, let me write one page that ended up to being several pages. And this was during the time of COVID, the time of uncertainty, the time where the world was confined into not knowing if there is tomorrow, but being able to have an intervention of saying, I need to remain sober. And so me, at that time, I was confined at my workplace. I have family, but I was not with family. So the confinement came from 1 week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks to a month to 2 months to 3 months to 4 months.
And you're living alone?
Living in a room, but at a workplace.
Were you in your country of
Yes,
birth?
I was in my
Uganda.
country. I was in my country.
Wow.
Yes. But a few kilometers away from your family, but you cannot go
Locked
to
down.
stay with
You
your
can't.
family.
Yeah.
One, just because it was locked down. Two, because partly essential worker and you needed to be at the office of your workplace.
Wow.
So the first 2 weeks seemed okay. The third week didn't seem okay. Kids are back at home and you're like, wow, my children at home, what am I doing here? So then most likely stress levels started to come in.
Anxiety and tension.
Anxiety, overthink. I don't believe this should continue like this. Every time it was the 21st day, His Excellency would say, you know what, extension. But I want to thank God, because I believe this to me was really God's way of saying, your purpose should now be documented.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was that very day, I believe it was the 11th of April, that I started writing this book that has become a milestone in my life and a blessing. So I was encouraged, one, to share my own personal experience. I was encouraged to, and when I say personal experience, because I believe I'm of age. I'm not 20 anymore, I'm not 30, I'm not 40, being at the 5th level. But at the time of writing this book, I was still at the 4th level. I thought I had something to speak to. I thought I had met challenges that people would love to listen to. And more so, the other point was mentorship gaps. As an influence person, I thought, when you mentor, what else are you talking about in terms of mentoring? So sharing those mentorship nuggets of being able to allow people speak to you in a more indirect way through a book was something I thought was also brilliant to do. But also the thought leadership in terms of leadership engagements. So those were almost the 3 things that had encouraged me to write this book.
Okay.
And every chapter speaks to my experience, which I then relate to a few personal lessons that I've learned over time, but also leading to something I believe everyone would relate to. Thank you.
Wow. So as you're mentioning this, so from that point of anxiety, uncertainty is the right word, so to speak, you use the time to pen down your lessons, and these lessons are what you framed into each of the chapters. And now going into the book, when I read it first time, there's a part I saw you really amplify within it. You're mentioning change maker. Yeah, so by definition, what did you mean by change maker?
Everyone is a change maker. From the time you're formed into your mother's womb, you have a different DNA, you have different fingerprints, meaning your purpose to be a change maker. And most times it just needs a bit of tweaking it, a bit of having a certain environment that would allow you to bring out that intentionality of your life. So I believe a change maker is someone that does not remain the same and does not allow people to remain the same in his own environment or her own environment, in the same community or the country as well, and the world. So it is the person that looks at a necessity and turns it into an opportunity. A change maker is a person that looks at a challenge and also turns it into an opportunity. So a change maker is that person who has gone to school or not gone to school, but ends up being an employer. That is a change maker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you also mentioned a very critical subject in the book, blossom where you are planted. Meaning, because what I hear you say is purpose. I hear you unpack purpose. Because God puts us on earth for a reason. Yeah? And one of the key reasons, one of my coaches says, there are 3 questions. If you answer them, you're good. 1, the reason for being. Yeah. 2, your birthday. Yeah, the day of your birth, the day when you meet your why for being, which is the same as purpose. And the last or the third one, the reason why you should be remembered or why you shouldn't be forgotten. So from what I hear you say is being a change maker is intentional. It is not something that just happens. You have to be deliberate. You have to prioritize it. You have to make choices. And these choices, you have to make them in the right frame of mind. You have to make them because you are standing. And one of the key themes you wrote about, you say that the world is a sea. Yeah? And we are the vessels. Yeah? On that sea. So if you're not intentional, the water, I mean, you say it better. Can you please unpack it for us?
I'm glad you talk about blossom where you planted.
Yes.
Blossom where you planted is a mantra that I've, over the years, picked to be my first tool draw of my interests in terms of why am I in a particular place? Yeah. What am I supposed to do in this place? Then what is my goal in terms of achieving the very reason I'm in that place? And it's something that everyone can relate to. When you blossom where you're planted, it's just like a flower starts off with a bud, and then later on you can, bloom. And when you bloom, everyone gets to see your beauty, gets to see how you look like. And so in myself, I said, I need to be that bud that gets to bloom, and then people get to see who I am. And I was saying I was going to read on page 1 to 3 of this book. I started by saying a word of caution. You will face quite a number of obstacles and opposing forces in your journey. As you choose to bloom and network, do not be shocked when you meet challenges such as discouragement, backbiting, people talking behind your back, and people stabbing you in the back, and so on. It is an occupational hazard for those who want to grow the CEO in them. So learn to navigate through the life regardless of these things. Let them be your stepping stones to greatness. Cheer yourself up, preach to yourself a revival if you have to. But the one most important thing I wanted to talk about is why it is the mantra, bloom where you're planted, is paramount regardless of the environment you find yourself in. It is necessary for everyone, not only me, that you get to switch in your favorite time and space. My favorite space is being a Christian. And so as a Christian, every time I believe I am thrown backwards into the space of comfort, I first call on to God and find out how best can I deal with any challenge. But also not only in dealing with challenge, but even when you want to improve on the journey that you've been purposed to be, is call on God. Yeah, I've spoken to him in when I wasn't sure speaking to him, where you're told by your mother you need to pray. I believe that is a starting point of God trying to allow you to bloom. Yeah, because you're speaking to him by saying maybe you want tea, or you want to go to a certain school, or you want to get a certain position. So all those things, sometimes people will get on our knees and pray. You're actually praying to that fact of you want to bloom where you're planted. But you have to do more than that. After you're positioned, what else are you doing? Is you get to learn what the space needs you to do. You get to learn that you need maybe to even nurture other people because it's a space of growth. When you grow, you leave the position you're at to another level. So you need to groom other people, you need to nurture them, you need to pour out what you are and your best. So yes, blooming where you're planted is being able to plant that seed that will come out to get the seed, and the seed will be able to be also planted elsewhere, and that seed will continuously grow and be planted and grow and be planted.
Something you mentioned there that just struck my nerves. Preach to yourself. Self-affirmation.
Yep.
And let me tell you, the heart, which is the soul within us, who is the real us, as God created us to be, is listening to the words that you're telling yourself. Because the Bible, the good book, says that as man thinketh, so is he. But then when you utter words, you are creating something, because God made you a creator. Now, you being a creative, I don't think it's a coincidence where you say you better and ought to preach to yourself. Tell yourself that I can do it. Tell yourself I am fearfully and wonderfully made by God. Tell yourself every day I can do it. Tell yourself I'm a champion. Tell yourself I'm a winner, and no one is better than me because I'm unique, distinct, different. You mentioned even before you're created by God, before you're formed in your mother's womb, you're uniquely distinguished from everyone else in the world. Your fingerprints, your very being, you're uniquely gifted and special. So when you find yourself and you meet yourself, then you ought to tell the world who you truly are. We shall come back to contents of the book, but I want to know, what is your favorite part of being a writer, being a journalist in your past life? What is the favorite part for you, writing? I mean, what is that wow factor that you see in writing and you're like, hey, this is it for me?
Wow. The favorite part of being a writer is you are in position to reflect. And when you reflect, you're able to actually go deeper than what you thought you knew about yourself. And so my time of writing, I was able to go like close to so many years. Not the years that I have on earth, but also my father's years on earth, because then I needed to know, why am I born a Mtoro? And who are the Batoro people? What are these cultures that they believe in, and why do they believe in these cultures? I was able to go deeper to know, why am I Ugandan? And what does it stand for me to be patriotic? What does it stand for me to add value to the economy of this world or this country? And so the desire of writing took me forth to be able to pour out and bring out the Irene in terms of the stages when I grew up in primary, when I grew up in secondary, when I grew up and got my first job, what elevated me to that job? Was it a need, or was it purpose? Or was it an opportunity? The purpose of being able to share that, even over the different stages of life, you actually reach somewhere and you're going to be solid. And in that solidness is when you're able to influence.
What was wow! Ooh, rock a moment, light bulb moment. Can you repeat that, please?
It is at the moment of when you're writing, you get to understand and define your journey and the steps you have taken. And you reach at all the levels, and most importantly, at the solid moment when you're able to influence.
Wow. What I'm hearing you mention, that not every opportunity is within purpose. There are many opportunities that will come in your way, in your ecosystem, but they are not for you. Because if you get them, actually, you'll drain yourself and drag yourself down. So purpose, being a pillar, which is very important in life, when it meets opportunity, then I see you talk about impact and talk about influence. Because when you're influencing in the place where you're made to be, then you're actually living. I always say, when you live in your purpose and you're doing everything that you ought to do in that purpose, it's actually a true act of worship. Because God tells us, go fill the world, have dominion, subdue it. So, in everything that you ought to do, you ought to first of all find your why, and when you find your why, then you're able now to do. I referenced that in my first book, Out of the Crowd, chapter number 1, where I said distinguished by an authentic identity. Everyone that and you mentioned that when you went deeper, to drill deeper, to distill the whole essence of Irene's being. Why is it a coincidence that God let you be born in a particular tribe? Is it a coincidence that He let you be born in a particular family? Is it a coincidence that He let you be born and raised in a particular space? I believe there is no coincidences. And from what you say, exactly this is woven. Moving on to ask, what are the core themes that you would say are in the CEO in you, the book?
Wow. I wrote this book, and when I was getting to my story, the story was to be able to understand the meaning of my past. Yeah. And so I decided to paraphrase it in 6 E's. And the first E being excitement. That is a stage you're excited of anything, of where you have gone, of even maybe dad coming back with a sweet is an excitement. And so you're in position to do a lot of exciting things but not planned for. Yeah. And the other one being expectation. Expectation. Now you've started to define your role, to define why you're in a particular place. For instance, at the stage of expectation, I think that's the time I was now into journalism. So I had my own expectations, definitely designed for myself to be able to achieve. And so this is also another stage that people needed to know. When you're in that stage of expecting, what are you expecting? How are you defining yourself better? And how are you articulating your mission so that you can achieve it? And then you have the other E, which is exposure. On the stage of expectation, because you are being employed or you're working for someone or you're in a certain space, you are now being exposed. But how do you allow the exposure to benefit you? Most times we are in spaces and we actually block our eyes and we don't need to get the exposure. The exposure is, are you able to walk the journey of your supervisor? Can you at least try and study what your supervisor is doing? That's already exposure, because the supervisor already knows maybe how to write the letter or how to communicate or how to present XYZ. So that exposure is very important, that people take very patent interest in it. And it's a very beautiful stage, because most times that's where people now pick the idea of being self-employed, because they've been exposed. Then the other E being the experience. So out of being exposed, how are you using the exposure now to gain your own experience? Yeah. So you need to then train better. You need to get people to mentor you. You need to get networking environments that can give you more insights in what you're doing. And so those themes were really at stage level of every stage that I went through. And then the empowerment. The empowerment to me is where I have the blossom where you're planted. The empowerment means you are now empowered to leave footprint.
Wow.
That your footprint should be able to be seen by all your peers around you. Let it be at school, let it be in the marketplace, let it be in a church. So your footprint is very, very, very important.
Your mark on the walls.
Yeah, and then the last one being exceptional. How are you exceptional? Because you need to be very exceptional in everything that you do. And so to me, my exceptional was I was able to see something that I can do, not only for me, but for someone else. Not only for someone else, but for a community. Not only for a community, but for the country. And that is what defines the person who has become excellent and exceptional. Because you stop thinking about you, and it's about the entirety of your country, so that when you live in this country, everyone gets to benefit from your
I like that so much. The last one, exceptional. Mother Teresa says, yeah, and you're aware she's a Nobel winner, prize winner for peace. She won that because of her works in Calcutta, India, because she was supporting communities that were affected by poverty. Poverty takes away peace. Yeah, it takes it away because you don't have a medication when you're sick to take your child to hospital. So you become vulnerable. Anytime they will pass on because you can't get access to healthcare. So she was given she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She said that I can do something.
She did it selflessly.
Selflessly, yes. I can do something, and there's something I can do, but you can do. But when we join hands together, all of us win. Yeah, when she mentioned that, I hear you say that in being exceptional, as you can't do it alone, you have to do it as a collective. You have to find people with a common thought process, common ground to be able to want to do that. And this is, for me, summarize the book and actually give the book a heartbeat. Excitement, expectation, exposure, experience, empowerment, and being exceptional, which also frames into the excellence construct, I would say. Hey, what do you do when you're not writing?
So many things. But what I do when I'm not writing is I'm a family person. I love being home. I love being in my space. And so I ensure that I'm in the moment of the family being able to love that I'm there. So I'm either cooking or I'm watching a movie and the tours in different places. So when I'm not writing, I'm meditating as well on what next. When I'm not writing, I'm thinking constructively. What should I be doing that is different from what I did yesterday? So, and most times it's that space. I try and give myself the space that allows me to create, the space that allows me to innovate, the space that allows me to think out of the box. And that space is only when you have your me time.
Your you time, yes.
So my me time is our block of everything. And maybe play some nice music. I block off everything and decide like I'm going to talk to God. And so I'll pray, I'll sing, and then, but it's very important that when someone is not doing, even when it's just not writing, not for me, because you're speaking to an audience of people doing so many things. So if you're not a writer, what you do in the space when you're not, maybe you're doing the Cobra work, or when you're not in the factory and trying to support whatever production is going on, or when you're not behind your desk trying to meet the timeline for your boss's email or a report, is reflect on what you can do for yourself. And that reflection is always in your me time or always with the people you love most. So I love, again, like I said from the beginning, my beautiful time is being home. And that will just channel out the best out of me.